The heavy lecture hall door slammed shut, with a resonant metallic click that echoed through the silent auditorium. Professor Celine Aria stood at the front of the room, her silhouette framed by the glow of the smartboard. Elegant fingers still hovering over the remote. Noah's Aria remained frozen in the aisle, backpack slung over one shoulder, heart hammering against his ribs. "You're not leaving this campus," she said, her voice velvet soft yet edged with steel. "Or me until you promise." Noah's breath caught as her gray eyes locked onto him with terrifying intensity. The woman who controlled half the tech industry had just locked 200 students worth of doors for him. But none of that had happened yet. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of Lecture Hall 7, casting long, golden rectangles across the polished wooden floors. Noah's boss sat near the back as always, notebook open, but his mind elsewhere. Final year. One more semester of keeping his head down, finishing his thesis, and escaping into a quiet, independent life. No more feeling like a ghost in his own story. Professor Celine Aria moved through her lecture on AI ethics with effortless command, tall and strikingly composed in a tailored black suit that whispered power, her long dark hair pinned in an elegant chignon. Every gesture was precise, every word carried weight. Students hung on her every syllable, not just because she was brilliant, but because something about her presence demanded attention. As the lecture ended and students began filing out, Noah lingered to pack his notes. He was the last one left. "Mr. Vase," her voice stopped him at the door. He turned. Celine stood behind the lectern, watching him with an unreadable expression. "Yes, Professor. Stay a moment. There's something I need to discuss about your latest submission." Noah hesitated but nodded. Stepping back into the hall, the last few students trickled out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Celine walked slowly down the aisle toward him, her heels echoing. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Flawless porcelain skin, sharp cheekbones, and those piercing gray eyes that seemed to see straight through him. She stopped, just a few feet away. "You're exceptionally talented," she said, quietly. "Your analysis on autonomous decision-making showed real insight. Rare in fact." Noah shifted his weight. "And thank you." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote. Without breaking eye contact, she pressed a button. The heavy, automated doors of the lecture hall locked with a loud final thunk. The sound reverberated through the empty room like a prison cell ceiling. Noah's stomach dropped. He turned sharply toward the doors, then back to her. "Professor, what are you doing?" Celine's expression remained calm, almost serene, but something darker flickered behind her eyes. Something hungry and desperate. "You're not leaving this campus," she said softly, "or me until you promise never to leave again." The air thickened. Noah's pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't a joke. The woman standing before him wasn't just his professor. She was Celine Vase, CEO of Aria Dynamics, one of the most powerful people in the country. And right now, every ounce of that power was focused entirely on him. "I don't understand," he managed, backing up a step until he hit a desk. "This is crazy. You can't just lock the doors." "I can," she replied simply, "and I have security reports to me. The board listens to me. This entire university exists because of what my company funds." She took one graceful step closer. "I've watched you for months, Noah. The way you isolate yourself, the way you flinch when people get too close. You're just like me, afraid of being left behind." Her voice dropped to a whisper that still carried perfectly across the distance between them. "I won't let that happen to you. Not while I'm here." Noah's back pressed harder against the desk. Part of him wanted to run to demand she open the doors. Another part, the lonely, exhausted part that had carried abandonment wounds for years, felt strangely seen, wanted. Celine's hand reached out, not touching him, but hovering close enough that he could feel the warmth. Promise me, Noah's promise, you'll stay on this campus with me. The silence stretched heavy and electric. Outside the tall windows, the normal campus world continued. Students laughing, birds singing, completely unaware that inside this hall, everything had just shifted. Noah swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. I promise. A slow, beautiful, and utterly terrifying smile curved Celine's lips. Good boy. The next morning, Noah sat in the bustling campus cafe, staring at his phone in disbelief. His academic portal had been updated. Overnight, 3 of his carefully chosen electives were gone. In their place were new slots, all perfectly aligned with Professor Arias' teaching schedule, Advanced AI Strategy Private Research Seminar. Even his Friday afternoon independent study block had been moved. What the hells? He muttered. A shadow fell over his table. He looked up. Celine stood there in a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt, looking every inch the untouchable CEO. She carried 2 coffees. When she placed in front of him oat milk, single shot of espresso, dash of cinnamon. Exactly how he liked it. He had never told her. Good morning, Noah. Her voice was warm, almost affectionate. I took the liberty of optimizing your schedule. You'll thank me later. He stared at the cup, then at her. You changed my classes without asking me. Of course. She sat down across from him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You were wasting your potential in those mediocre courses. Now you'll be where you belong, working directly under my guidance. Noah felt heat rising in his cheeks, anger, confusion, and something dangerously close to flattery. Professor, this is my education, my future. You can't just. I already did. She leaned forward slightly, her gray eyes locking onto his with that same intense focus from yesterday. And you promised to stay. Remember, this is me, keeping you safe, keeping you close. No one else will understand your brilliance the way I do. Her fingers brushed lightly against his hand as she adjusted the coffee cup. The touch lingered just a second too long. Around them, other students whispered. A few glanced their way. The rumors had already started. Noah pulled his hand back, heart racing. Yesterday's promise felt heavier now, like invisible chains tightening around his life. Yet, when Celine looked at him like he was the only person in the entire world who mattered, some broken part of him didn't entirely hate it. I need time to think about this, he said. Finally, Celine smiled that serene, dangerous smile again. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. She stood gracefully, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and the overwhelming feeling that his life was no longer entirely his own. As she walked away, Noah noticed something else. On the cup, a small handwritten note in elegant script. You look tired yesterday. Drink this. I'll see you in class. The library's upper floor was nearly deserted past midnight. Only the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of pages broke the silence. Noah sat hunched over his laptop in a quiet corner cubicle, eyes burning from hours of revisions. His thesis on ethical constraints in autonomous systems was due in 3 weeks, and the pressure felt crushing. He rubbed his temples, muttering under his breath. A soft click of heels on the marble floor made him look up. Celine Aria emerged from the shadows between the towering bookshelves, carrying a thin folder. She wore a long black coat over what was clearly her work attire. elegant even at this hour. Her hair was slightly looser than usual, a few dark strands framing her face. She looked both powerful and strangely fragile. Under the warm library lighting, Ililiously, she said gently, as if she had every right to be there at 1:17 a.m. You shouldn't push yourself so hard. Alone. He straightened, startled. Professor, how did you know I was here? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she placed the folder on the desk in front of him. Inside were printed pages of his latest thesis draft, covered in meticulous handwritten notes. In her elegant script, margin comments, crossed out paragraphs, suggestions for stronger arguments, and even small questions that showed she had read every single line with intense care. I couldn't sleep, she admitted softly. Not while knowing you were struggling with this section on moral responsibility. Frameworks. Noah flipped through the pages stunned. Some notes reference sources he hadn't even considered yet. Others pointed out subtle logical flaws he had missed despite 3 rewrites. This wasn't casual feedback. This was the kind of detailed, obsessive attention most advisors never gave. You read my entire draft tonight? He asked, voice low. I did. Celine pulled up a chair and sat beside him close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Your thinking is brilliant, Noah, but you isolate yourself too much. You don't have to carry this alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. The scent of her perfume, something expensive and subtly floral, mingled with the smell of old books. Noah felt the weight of her gaze on the side of his face. Part of him wanted to push back to tell her this was crossing every professional line. But another part, the part that had spent years writing papers in empty rooms with no one to bounce ideas off, felt a dangerous warmth spreading through his chest. Thank you, he said quietly, meaning it. This is incredibly helpful. Celine's hand moved slowly, almost hesitantly, and brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Her touch was cool and gentle, lingering, just long enough to make his breath catch. You work so hard to prove you don't need anyone, she whispered. But you do. And am here now. She stood, after a moment, smoothing her coat. Get some rest. I'll see you in class tomorrow. As she walked away between the shelves, Noah stared at the annotated pages. His heart was beating too fast. The promise he made yesterday felt less like a cage and more like an anchor, terrifying and strangely comforting at the same time. He didn't notice the small security camera in the corner of the ceiling, quietly recording everything. Dark clouds had rolled in without warning during the late afternoon. By the time Noah left the engineering building, fat raindrops were already pelting the pavement. He cursed under his breath and broke into a jog toward his dorm, backpack held uselessly over his head. He didn't make it far. Nelia Celine's voice cut through the downpour. She stood under a small white gazebo near the central quad, the one usually used for student events. Elegant, even while slightly damp. She held a large umbrella, but hadn't opened it yet. Come here, she called, beckoning him with a gloved hand. He hesitated only a second before sprinting over. The gazebo offered limited shelter, forcing them to stand close together as the rain intensified into a heavy curtain around them. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Celine looked at his soaked hoodie and glasses spotted with rain. Without a word, she shrugged off her expensive black coat and draped it over his shoulders. The fabric was warm from her body heat and carried her scent. You'll catch a cold, she said, simply adjusting the coat around him. Her hands lingered on his shoulders, thumbs brushing lightly against the wet fabric. I'm fine, Noah protested, though he didn't remove the coat. Being this close to her made the air feel thinner. You'll get wet. I don't care, Her voice was soft, almost tender. Raindrops clung to her long lashes as she looked up at him. "I'd rather you stay dry." They stood in silence for several minutes as the storm raged. Students rushed past in the distance. But inside the small gazebo, the world felt reduced to just the two of them. Celine's hand eventually moved from his shoulder down to his arm. A gentle but possessive grip. "You promise to stay," she murmured, barely audible, over the rain. "But sometimes I worry. You'll still try to disappear like everyone else has." Noah turned his head to look at her. For the first time, he saw something raw beneath her usual composure. A deep aching loneliness that mirrored his own. "I'm still here," he said. Celine's gray eyes softened. She stepped even closer until their bodies nearly touched. One of her hands rose to cup his cheek, thumb tracing a raindrop on his skin. For a heartbeat, Noah thought she might kiss him. The tension crackled between them like the lightning overhead. Instead, she rested her forehead gently against his, eyes closed. "Good," she whispered, "because I can let my evening board meeting the moment I saw the weather. I wanted to be here with you." The rain continued pouring around their small sanctuary, but inside that moment, something shifted again. The obsession was still there, intense and all-consuming, but so was something warmer, something that felt dangerously like care. Noah didn't pull away. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the main lecture hall as students packed up after Celine's class. Noah was gathering his notes when Maya Lin approached his desk with her usual bright energy. The 20-year-old computer science major had curly auburn hair and an easy smile that made her popular among their peers. "Hey, Noah, I was thinking our group is doing a collaborative project on AI bias detection. We could really use someone with your thesis background. Want to join us? We meet every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon in the student lounge." Noah opened his mouth to respond when a familiar presence materialized beside them. "That won't be necessary." Celine's voice was smooth as silk, yet carried an unmistakable chill. She stood there in a tailored navy suit, holding a tablet, looking every bit the powerful CEO. Her gray eyes fixed on Maya with polite but terrifying intensity. "Noah has already been assigned to my private research team," Celine continued, placing a hand lightly on Noah's shoulder. The touch was possessive. "His schedule is quite full now. I'm afraid he won't have time for other commitments." Maya blinked clearly, taken aback. "Oh, I didn't realize. Professor Arya. You thought correctly that he's talented." Celine interrupted with a calm smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Which is precisely why he'll be working directly with me. I've already adjusted his academic credits accordingly." The tension in the air was thick. A few nearby students pretended not to eavesdrop, but whispers were already spreading. Noah felt heat creep up his neck, embarrassment mixed with something else he couldn't quite name. Maya glanced at him, clearly hoping he'd speak up. Noah hesitated, caught between wanting normal friendships and the weight of the promise he'd made. I'm pretty tied up with Professor Arias' projects," he said, finally avoiding Maya's eyes. Maya's smile faltered. "Right. No worries. Catch you later, Noah." As she walked away, Celine's hand remained on his shoulder, fingers tightening just slightly. She leaned in closer, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "No one else needs your time, Noah. They don't understand you the way I do. They never will." Noah swallowed. The casual way she had removed Maya from his orbit sent a shiver down his spine. This was no longer subtle manipulation. It was open, painstaking. Yet when Celine turned those intense gray eyes on him, filled with such single-minded devotion. He found it harder than ever to pull away. She slid a small note into his hand before leaving. It contained his new research teen schedule. Every slot now revolved entirely around her. Celine's private office on the top floor of the administration building looked more like a CEO suite than a professor's space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire campus. Modern art pieces decorated the walls, and a massive oak desk dominated the center of the room. Noah stood in front of that desk, fists clenched at his sides. "You can't just do this," he said, voice tight with frustration. "You reassigned my entire schedule. You scared off Maya. You're watching my every move. This isn't normal, Professor. This is obsessive." Celine sat behind her desk, perfectly composed, though her fingers gripped the edge of the wood a little too tightly. She watched him with those piercing eyes, expression unreadable. "Obsession," she repeated softly. "Is it obsession to care about someone? To want to protect them from the world that has already hurt them so much?" She stood slowly and walked around the desk until she was standing directly in front of him. "Close. Too close. I know about your family, Noah. I know how they left when you needed them most. I know how you've spent years building walls so no one can abandon you again." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I know because I've lived it, too." Noah's breath hitched. Those were details he had never shared with anyone at this university. How he demanded. "Celine didn't flinch. Because you matter to me more than anyone has in a very long time. I've made sure nothing and no one can take you away." She reached out and gently took his hand, placing it against her chest so he could feel her racing heartbeat beneath the expensive fabric of her blouse. "I'm terrified, Noah," she admitted, voice cracking for the first time. "Terrified that if I give you space, you'll disappear like everyone else. So yes, I watch, I protect, I clear the path because losing you is not something I can survive." The raw vulnerability in her eyes hit Eyeless harder than any display of power. For a moment, the terrifying Yandere professor vanished, replaced by a lonely, brilliant woman who had built an empire to fill the emptiness inside. He should have pulled away. He should have demanded she stop. Instead, he stood there, hands still pressed to her chest, feeling the warmth of her skin through her clothes and the desperate rhythm of her heart. "I need boundaries," he whispered finally. "I can't live in a cage, even if it's made of care." Celine's eyes shimmered. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "Then teach me how," she breathed. "Because I don't know how to love." Halfway, the silence that followed was heavy with unspoken promises and dangerous possibilities. The evening air was cool as Noah walked back from the library toward his dorm. The path was dimly lit by ornate lampposts, and most students had already retreated indoors. He was mentally replaying the confrontation in Celine's office when a group of 3 senior guys stepped out from between 2 buildings, clearly drunk. "Hey, scholarship kid," one of them slurred, blocking his path. "Heard your boss' little pet project. What's it like being the teacher's favorite?" Noah's tried to sidestep them. "Not interested. Just let me through." The tallest one shoved him hard in the chest, sending him stumbling back. "Too good for us now. Ha? Think her money makes you special." Things escalated quickly. A punch grazed Noah's jaw. He managed to dodge the worst of it. But the situation was turning ugly fast. Then, like a force of nature, Celine appeared. She moved with terrifying purpose, flanked by 2 campus security officers who seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Her expression was ice cold, eyes blazing with protective fury. "Remove them," she ordered, voice sharp as a blade. "Permanently. I want them off campus grounds within the hour." File. The report's under my direct authority. The security officers didn't hesitate. They moved in swiftly, restraining the drunk students while Celine stepped forward and grabbed Noah's wrist, pulling him protectively behind her. Are you hurt? She asked, her free hand gently tilting his chin to inspect the small bruise forming on his jaw. Her touch was surprisingly tender compared to the steel in her voice moments earlier. I'm okay, Noah muttered, still processing how quickly she had appeared. How did you? I always know where you are, she said simply as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And I will never let anyone hurt you. The security team dragged the struggling students away. One of them shouted threats, but Celine didn't even blink. Her entire focus remained on Noah's. She kept holding his wrist as they walked, her grip firm, but not painful. The campus felt different now, quieter, as if even the night itself knew better than to interfere with Celine Aria when she was protecting what was hers. When they reached the steps of his dorm, she finally released him, but not before brushing her thumb across the back of his hand in a lingering caress. Get some rest, she whispered. I'll handle the rest. As she turned to leave, Noah noticed two maintenance workers already installing new security features near the dorm entrance, cameras and reinforced locks, all clearly at her direction. He stood there for a long time after she disappeared into the night, heart pounding with a confusing mix of gratitude, fear, and something warmer he didn't want to name. Noah woke up, gasping at 3:12 a.m., sweat soaking his sheets. The nightmare had been the same, one that haunted him for years. His parents' departure, the empty house, the crushing silence of being left behind. He sat up, breathing hard, reaching for his phone out of pure habit. It rang. Before he could even unlock it, Celine's name flashed on the screen. He answered, voice rough. Hello. I felt it, she said softly on the other end. No greeting, no explanation for why she was calling in the middle of the night. You were having a nightmare. Are you all right? Noah blinked in the darkness of his room. How? I couldn't sleep either, she murmured. I was reviewing some documents when I felt restless. Tell me, what happened in the dream? He hesitated, but the quiet concern in her voice cracked his defenses. Slowly, he began describing the nightmare, the abandonment, the loneliness, the fear of never being enough. Celine listened, without interrupting, her breathing steady on the other end of the line. When he finished, she spoke gently. You are enough. Noah is more than enough. And you will never have to face that kind of emptiness again. Not while I'm here. There was a long pause. Then very softly, she began to hum. It was a gentle, soothing melody. Something classical and comforting. Her voice was surprisingly beautiful, low and warm. Close your eyes, she whispered between notes. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Ilis lay back down, phone pressed to his ear. As absurd and invasive as it should have felt, the sound of her voice and the gentle humming slowly eased the tightness in his chest. For the first time in years, the nightmare's grip loosened. He didn't remember falling asleep, but when he did, Celine was still humming softly on the other end of the line. The rain from earlier in the week had cleared, leaving the campus crisp and fresh. But inside Celine's private office, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Noah had come to confront her again, this time armed with evidence. A fellow student had tipped him off about unusual access logs on the university system. When he dug deeper, using his own skills, he found it. Multiple unauthorized entries into his personal records, location tracking, even his medical history from the campus clinic. He slammed the printed logs onto her desk, Explain this. He demanded, voice shaking with anger and betrayal. You didn't just change my schedule. You've been watching me for how long? Celine stood behind her desk, unnaturally still. For the first time since had met her, her perfect composure cracked. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers, gray eyes scanning the evidence. Then slowly, she walked to a hidden panel in the bookshelf, opened it, and pulled out a thick unmarked folder. She placed it in front of him with reverent care. Open it, she whispered. Noah did. Inside were hundreds of pages, photos of him, taken across campus, studying in the library, eating alone in the cafe, even sleeping at his desk during an all-nighter, detailed notes on his routines, his favorite foods, the books he read, the way he rubbed his wrist when anxious, medical records, old family court documents, everything. He looked up at her, stunned. This is. For over a year. Celine's eyes filled with tears. She didn't bother wiping them away as they spilled down her cheeks. Yes, she admitted, voice breaking. I first noticed you during a freshman orientation lecture. You were sitting alone, looking so lost, so much like me. The more I learned about you, the more I couldn't look away. I told myself I was just protecting a promising student, but that was a lie. She stepped around the desk and sank to her knees in front of him, looking up with raw desperation. Broken. Noah. My parents used me as a pawn in their divorce. Every relationship I've had ended in betrayal or abandonment. When I saw you, I knew you were the one person who could understand me, the one person I couldn't lose. Her hands reached for his, gripping them tightly. I changed your schedule. I removed threats. I watched over you because the thought of you leaving this campus, of leaving me, makes me feel like I'm dying. I know it's wrong. I know it's terrifying. But I don't know how to stop. Tears continued falling as she pressed her forehead against his hands. I love you, she whispered. Not as your professor, not as a CEO, as someone who has never needed anyone until you. Please don't hate me. The folder lay open between them. Evidence of her obsession spread out like a confession. Noah's heart hammered violently. He should have been horrified. He should have run. Instead, he found himself slowly kneeling down to her level, their faces inches apart. For the first time, he saw her not as the untouchable Yandere CEO, but as a deeply wounded woman offering him her broken heart. I don't hate you, he said, hoarsely. I'm just scared of this. Of us. Celine let out a shaky sob of relief and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. Then, be scared with me, she whispered, against his neck. Just don't leave. 2 days after the confession, Noah stood in Celine's campus residence, a luxurious penthouse apartment built exclusively for her use on university grounds. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the entire campus at dusk. Celine had prepared dinner. Candlelight flickered across the elegant table. She was dressed in a soft silk blouse and skirt, rather than her usual power suits. More vulnerable, more human. But Noah's had come with purpose. This can't continue like this, he said firmly after they had eaten in tense silence. The tracking, the constant surveillance, the way you remove anyone who gets too close. I can't live like that. Celine, I want. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Pain flashed across her face, but she didn't interrupt. Noah's continued, voice steady despite his nerves. I care about you more than I probably should. But if this is going to work, whatever this is, I need space to breathe. I need to make my own choices. I need trust. Celine set her fork down. Her hands clenched in her lap. I'm terrified that, if I give you space, you'll realize you don't need me, she admitted quietly. No, Noah said, reaching across the table to take her hand. But real love isn't control, it's choosing each other, even when we're free to walk away. She was silent for a long time, staring at their joined hands. Tears welled up again, but she fought them back. What do you need from me? She asked finally, voice small. Delete the location. Tracking. No more unauthorized access to my records. Let me keep my friendships. And when you feel the urge to control something, talk to me instead. Celine closed her eyes, visibly struggling. The battle between her obsessive nature and her desire to keep him was clear on her face. After several painful seconds, she nodded. I'll delete the tracking tonight, she whispered, and I'll try for you, but please be patient with me. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Noah squeezed her hand. Well, figure it out together. Celine stood and moved around the table. She pulled him into a tight embrace, burying her face in his chest. I'm trying, she repeated, voice muffled against his shirt. I'm really trying. For the first time, Noah hugged her back without reservation. The next afternoon, Noah was working in Celine's private research lab when the door opened without a knock. A tall, sharply dressed man in his mid-30s entered, exuding the same commanding presence as Celine, but with a colder, more calculating edge. Adrian Voss, her older brother and co-founder of Aria Dynamics. He glanced at Noah's with open disdain before turning to his sister, who had risen from her chair instantly. Celine, Adrian said smoothly. We need to talk privately. Celine's posture stiffened. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Noah's. Adrian raised an eyebrow. This is business, not your latest distraction. The tension in the room thickened. Instantly, Noah stood slowly, sensing the brewing conflict. Adrian didn't waste time. The board is restless. Your little obsession with this student is becoming a liability. There are rumors, photos from the gala, whispers about favoritism and abuse of power. Our stock took a 3% dip this morning because of it. Celine's eyes flashed with dangerous intensity. My personal life is none of the board's concern. It is when it affects the company. Adrian snapped. End it now. Send the boy away or I will handle it myself. We have important contracts coming up that require your full focus. Noah felt a surge of anger. I'm not going anywhere. Adrian looked at him like he was an insect. You're a scholarship student with no influence. My sister collects talented people like toys. She'll tire of you eventually. Celine stepped between them, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. Leave, Adrian, and tell the board that if they push me, I will remind them exactly who built this company. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then smirked coldly. You're making a mistake, little sister. This infatuation will destroy everything you've built. After he left, Celine remained standing with her back to Noah's shoulders tense. When she finally turned, her expression was a mixture of fury and fear. He's right about one thing, she said quietly. My obsession with you. It's costing me, but I don't care. She walked over and cooped his face with both hands, eyes searching his desperately. Tell me I'm not losing everything for nothing. Noah's. Tell me you'll stay even when it gets harder. Noah placed his hands over hers, feeling the tremor in her fingers. I'm still here, he said. Well, face this together. Celine pulled him into a fierce embrace, holding him as if he might vanish at any moment. The annual Evergreen University Research Gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Central Administration Building. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead and the room was filled with professors, wealthy, donors, and influential alumni. Celine looked stunning in a sleek emerald gown that accentuated her figure. Her hair, elegantly swept up. She kept Noah's clothes by her side the entire evening, her hand often resting on his lower back or arm. The message was clear to everyone watching. He was hers. As they circulated, a young female researcher from another department approached Noah, while Celine was momentarily pulled away by a donor. "Hi, I'm Dr. Amara Singh. I've read your thesis work. It's brilliant. Would you be interested in collaborating on a paper sometime?" Before Noah could respond, Celine reappeared like a shadow. She slid her arm possessively around his waist, pulling him against her side. "I'm afraid I is fully committed to my research initiatives," she said with a polite but icy smile. "Perhaps you should focus on your own projects." Dr. Singh. The woman excused herself quickly, clearly unsettled. Noah's sighed. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured. "Yes, I did," Celine replied, turning to face him. Her hand came up to adjust his tie, a gesture that looked intimate to anyone watching. "I see how they look at you, how they want your time, your mind, your attention." Her fingers lingered on his chest. "They can't have you. None of them." The possessiveness should have alarmed him. Instead, after everything they'd shared, it sent a complicated warmth through him. He was beginning to understand the depth of her fear. Later in the evening, as they stood on a quiet balcony overlooking the illuminated campus, Celine leaned against him. "These events used to mean nothing to me," she whispered. "Now I only endure them because you're here." She turned and kissed his cheek softly, her lips lingering. For a moment, the Yandere intensity softened into something almost sweet, but as they returned inside, Noah's noticed several guests whispering and taking discreet photos. The rumors were spreading faster. The storm was coming. The scandal broke the next morning. Photos from the gala flooded social media and campus forums. Celine's possessive touches, the way she had publicly claimed Noah's, the cold dismissal of Dr. Singh, everything was captured in twisted headlines, appeared on university news sites and even leaked to larger tech blogs. CEO professor's shocking favoritism towards students sparks ethics concerns in ARIA. Dynamics era's controversial campus romance. By midday, the pressure was suffocating. Noah sat in Celine's office as she paced, phone pressed to her ear. Her usually flawless appearance showed cracks, hair slightly disheveled, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Yes, I understand the board's concerns," she said coldly into the phone. "No, I will not step down from my teaching position. This is a private matter." She hung up and slammed the phone onto her desk. For the first time, she looked truly shaken. "They want me to take a leave of absence," she told Noah's voice tight. "Adrian is pushing hard. He's using this to undermine my authority in the company. All because I refuse to hide how I feel about you." Noah stood and pulled her into his arms. She melted against him, gripping his shirt like a lifeline. "I never wanted this for you," she whispered. "I wanted to protect you, not drag you into my mess." Students outside were whispering as they passed the building. Some had even started a petition calling for an investigation into their relationship. The weight of public judgment pressed down on both of them. Celine pulled back slightly, cupping his face. Her eyes were fierce, despite the tears threatening to fall. "I don't regret any of it," she said. "Not the locking of the doors, not the watching, not falling so deeply for you. But I'm scared. Noah's scared that this world will force you to leave me." Noah rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still here. Well, get through this." But as they held each other, both knew the worst was yet to come. That night in Celine's residence. The dam finally broke. She had been quiet all evening, staring out the large windows at the darkened campus. Noah found her sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by printed articles and social media screenshots. Her usual elegant posture was gone. She looked small, fragile, and utterly exhausted. "Celine?" he asked softly, kneeling beside her. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. The strong, terrifying Yandere CEO was gone. In her place was a deeply wounded woman. "They're calling me a predator," she whispered. "A manipulator. They say I'm abusing my power, and maybe they're right." Her hands shook as she clutched one of the articles. "I locked you in that lecture hall. I tracked your every move. I removed people from your life. I did all of it because I was terrified of being abandoned again. But what if I really am just as broken and dangerous as they say?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached for him desperately, pulling him close. "I love you so much it hurts, Noah. It consumes me. But I don't want to destroy you. If staying with me means losing everything you've worked for, I should let you go, even if it kills me." Her body trembled with sobs as she clung to him. "I don't know how to love without control. I don't know how to trust that you'll stay. Please tell me what to do. I'm breaking and I don't know how to stop." Noah wrapped his arms around her tightly, one hand stroking her hair as she cried against his chest. In that moment, the power dynamic had completely shifted. The woman who had once locked doors to keep him close was now begging him not to leave. He held her through the storm of her emotions, feeling the full weight of her obsession, her love, and her pain. The emergency board meeting for Aria Dynamics was held via video conference the following evening, but Celine had insisted Noah stay with her in the residence. She sat at her sleek home office desk in a crisp black suit, hair perfectly styled, projecting strength. Even as the storm raged around them, Noah stood just off camera, watching with growing concern. The board members' faces filled the large monitor. Adrian sat at the head looking smug. "Celine, this has gone too far," one older board member said sternly. "The scandal is damaging our reputation. We need you to step back from the university position immediately and distance yourself from the student." Celine's expression remained icy calm, but her hand gripped the edge of the desk tightly. "No," she said flatly. Adrian leaned forward. "Then we have no choice. We're calling for a vote to limit your executive authority until this matter is resolved. Your obsession is costing us millions." The room went silent. Celine stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, in a voice clear and unwavering, she made her choice. "If protecting my relationship with Noah means stepping down as CEO, then I will." Gasps echoed through the speakers. Even Adrian looked shocked. "I built this company," Celine continued, voice steady, despite the visible pain in her eyes. "But I will not sacrifice the one person who makes me feel truly alive. If you force my hand, I will resign effective immediately and take my shares with me." Noah stepped forward. Instinctively, "Celine, don't." She held up a hand, eyes locked on the screen. "This is my decision." The board erupted into chaos. Adrian tried to speak, but Celine ended the call with a decisive click. She turned to Noah's breathing heavily. For the first time, the weight of what she had just done seemed to crash down on her. She had been willing to burn her empire for him. "I meant every word," she whispered, voice trembling. "You are more important to me than all of it." Noah pulled her into his arms, heart full and aching at the same time. The following morning brought a fragile quiet. Celine had barely slept. She sat on the balcony with Noah, wrapped in a soft robe, watching the sunrise paint the campus in soft golds and pinks. For once, there were no security reports, no hidden cameras, no desperate attempts to control his schedule. She had kept her promise. I deleted everything, she said quietly, handing him her tablet. The tracking apps, the access logs, the private files. It's all gone. Her hands shook slightly as she spoke. The act of giving up control was visibly painful for her. Noah took the tablet and then her hands. Thank you, he said sincerely. This means everything. Celine leaned her head on his shoulder. It's terrifying. Every instinct tells me to pull you closer to make sure you can't leave. But trying. Noah, really trying to trust that you'll stay because you want to. He turned and kissed her forehead gently. Choosing to be here every day. Not because you locked the doors, but because I see you, the real you. They sat in peaceful silence for a while, the campus waking up below them. Celine's fingers intertwined with his, no longer possessive, but seeking comfort and connection. I still feel it sometimes, she admitted softly. The fear, the need to keep you safe from everything. But I want to learn how to love you the right way, with trust, with freedom. Noah squeezed her hand. We'll learn together. For the first time since the lecture hall doors had locked weeks ago, their relationship felt like it was moving towards something healthier, still intense, still deeply emotional, but slowly becoming mutual. The sun was setting over the campus when Noah received the message. It was from an anonymous sender, but the content was clear: a one-way plane ticket to a prestigious research institute on the other side of the country, along with a full scholarship offer and a note that read, "Escape the scandal. Start fresh. No one has to know." He stared at the screen for a long time in his dorm room. This was the way out. A clean break. No more scandals. No more possessive intensity. No more walking the knife's edge between love and control. He could finally have the independent life he had always dreamed of. Celine had been giving him space as promised. No surprise visits. No tracking. Just occasional gentle texts checking in on him. She was trying so hard. Noah slipped the ticket into his pocket and walked across campus toward her residence. She opened the door wearing a simple sweater, looking more vulnerable than ever. "I got an offer," he said quietly, handing her the printed ticket. A real one, far from here, far from the scandal and from everything. Celine's face went pale. She took the paper with trembling fingers, staring at it as if it were a death sentence. For a moment, the old possessive fire flashed in her eyes. The urge to destroy the ticket, to lock the doors again, to beg or demand he stay. But she didn't. Instead, she slowly handed it back to him. Tears welled up, but she forced them down. "I won't stop you," she whispered, voice cracking. "I promised I would try to trust you. If this is what you need, if this is what makes you happy, then go." She turned away, shoulders shaking as she fought to hold herself together. "I love you enough to let you leave, Noah's, even if it destroys me." The silence stretched between them. Noah watched her, this powerful woman who had once locked an entire lecture hall to keep him close, now willingly opening the cage. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. "I choose you, not because I have to, but because I want to every single day." Celine turned in his arms, burying her face in his chest as the tears finally broke free. She held him like he was the only real thing in her world. Dawn broke over Evergreen University in soft hues of pink and gold. Noah and Celine stood together on the main campus quad. The Same place where their story had spiraled into obsession weeks earlier. The air was cool and fresh. Birds sang in the trees. The campus was quiet, still waking up. Celine reached into her pocket and pulled out a small key. The key to his old dorm room security upgrades she had installed. She pressed it into his hand. I'm giving it all back, she said softly. The extra security, the schedule influence, the feeling that I own any part of your life. You're free. Noah is truly free. She looked at him with those striking gray eyes now full of quiet hope rather than desperate possession. I still love you. Deeply, completely. But I want it to be a love you can walk away from so that when you stay, I know it's real. Noah took the key, then gently pulled her clothes. He puffed her face with both hands and kissed her slow, tender, and full of promise. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm staying, he whispered, not because you locked any doors, but because this us learning and growing together is where I want to be. Celine smiled through happy tears. For the first time, her embrace felt light and joyful rather than desperate. She took his hand as they walked across the dew-covered grass. The campus that had once felt like a beautiful prison now felt like home. Weeks had passed since the sunrise promise. The scandal had slowly faded from the headlines, helped by a carefully worded statement from Aria Dynamics acknowledging personal matters while emphasizing ethical boundaries. Celine had stepped back slightly from her more controversial teaching roles, but kept a reduced presence on campus. The board, after seeing her willingness to walk away, had ultimately backed down. Noah and Celine walked side by side through the central quad on a bright afternoon. No security detail hovered nearby. No hidden cameras. No forced schedule changes. Just two people choosing each other. Celine carried 2 coffees. His, prepared exactly how he liked it. Hers, black and strong. She handed him his cup with a small, almost shy smile. I didn't change your schedule this semester, she said softly. You picked every class yourself. Noah took the coffee and brushed his fingers against hers deliberately. I know, and I still chose 2 of your remaining courses. She let out a soft laugh, the sound lighter and more genuine than any he had heard from her before. They found a bench under a blooming cherry tree and sat together. Students passed by, some still whispering, but most had moved on. Their relationship was no longer a scandal, it was simply theirs. I still feel it sometimes, Celine admitted, leaning her head on his shoulder. That old fear, the urge to keep you close at all costs, but every time it rises. I remember that morning on the quad. I remember choosing to let you go and you choosing to stay. Noah wrapped an arm around her, and am still choosing you. Every day. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the campus move around them. For the first time, their love didn't feel like a cage or a desperate lifeline. It felt like a partnership, intense, passionate, and slowly becoming healthy. 1 year later, the first light of dawn touched the Evergreen University campus once again. Noah and Celine stood in the same spot on the main quad, where everything had changed. Celine looked radiant in a simple white dress, her long dark hair loose and flowing in the morning breeze. Noah stood beside her, no longer the guarded student, but a confident young man who had found his place. She turned to him and took both of his hands. I gave you the key to your freedom, she said softly, voice full of emotion. And you gave me something far more precious, your heart, freely given. Ella smiled and pulled her clothes. I locked the doors that day because I was terrified of losing you, she continued, gray eyes shining with happy tears. But you taught me how to open them, how to love without chains. He leaned in and kissed her deeply, slow, tender, and full of the journey they had walked together. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. We're both still healing, he whispered, but we're doing it together. No more cages, just us. Celine smiled, the most beautiful, peaceful smile he had ever seen on her face. I love you. Noah's aria. I love you too. Celine. Hand in hand, they walked across the dew-covered grass as the sun rose higher, painting the campus in warm, golden light. The place that had once been the setting of obsession had become the foundation of their new beginning. A love born in darkness had found its way into the light. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.